This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for, it's called loss and damage. And we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade and the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the corresponding banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region. Man
is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
We are tackling the hard-hitting topics, some controversial topics, some topics we sweep under the rug. You don't always have to forgive in a relationship for it to move forward.
If it is you are in a situation where you forgive the person, but to the detriment of yourself, what are you really doing?
It is very uncommon for somebody in the younger age group to have dementia.
Atheists don't not believe.
Is that I can't disprove God, but you also can't prove God, so we kind of at a stalemate.
We'll focus on the woman who's being the victim,
right,
or the man who's being the victim. We exclude the children.
Folks are trying to study the underlying brain mechanism to figure out how does this particular disorder happen in the brain? How is the brain processing this?
Don't worry about AI, worry about humans working with AI.
Are you willing to learn new skills to stay relevant for the future job market? That's the challenge that people are going to struggle with.
Folks, we're back and better than ever.
Your show have always appeared to be a show that is focused on going to the cause or looking to the cause.
We hardly ever talk about the white-collar crime, though. We always talk about the ones that involve more as physical violence against individuals.
The citizens will only measure transmission when water starts to flow through their taps.
The Constitution doesn't talk about local election.
Contract mafia is responsible for looting the country, and they own and operate these politicians.
So if you are running a country and you can't say nothing as a prime minister, please take up your bag and go.
It is not comparative to the murder figures, but it is in fact very high.
I believe he's protecting certain individuals.
Join me, Dr. Nalini Kokram, on What's Up Doc, where we discuss all your burning questions concerning health.
Trinidad and Tobago is among one of the highest risk group of patients that develop this form of genetic breast cancer.
What I'd like to take home from a short interview like this is screening. You must screen.
Because it's silent.
It's silent.
Yeah.
And because it's silent, you don't know it's there.
What's Up Doc, every Tuesday and Thursday on WESN, Content Capital.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm not going to do that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the
not no.
Let's go to the last part.
You are watching Strictly Legal on WESN Content Capital. Just give an overview of what exactly is that split arrangement.
Now you don't need to register nothing. You don't need. We can do that another time. But then it becomes a hit, and then everybody starts to want to claim.
The laws that predate many of the independent countries' constitutions are going to be those colonial laws.
We know there are an infinite amount of circumstances that would lead to a murder.
I have a great idea and, I have a great concept, but until it's actually expressed, it does not become intellectual property.
Accomplishments or targets of a forensic accountant is to quantify what may have been lost.
We believe we defend criminals and we manipulated the law and we exploited the system.
A responsible journalist will reach out to the person who they have the information on for a comment.
WESN.
Welcome to AM Prime on WESN Content Capital. I'm Keaton Shaw. Thank you very much for joining us this morning for this edition of the program. We're starting our conversation with focusing on the budget presentation yesterday. Well, the final budget presentation by Chief Secretary Farley Chavez Augustin in his role as Secretary for Finance and the Economy in Tobago. That being said, over the course of a 3-hour presentation, he laid out his plans for a budget that is revealed to be around 3.956 billion TT dollars, or roughly 5.8% of the national budget here in Trinidad and Tobago, presented by the Minister of Finance, Colm Imbert, of course. Now, there have already been responses surrounding that. We've heard from Watson Solomon Duke, his thoughts. We've heard from Kelvin Morris, who is the minority leader. But there's so many rules in Tobago and so many role players in Tobago that, of course, the conversation will continue for time to come. I'm joined this morning by one such, and that is the political leader of the Innovative Democratic Alliance, the IA, Dr. Denise Soifat Angus. She joins us virtually. Good morning, Dr. Soifat Angus. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Kita, good morning to all of your viewing and listening audience.
Well, Dr. Soifat Angus, the theme for the budget this year focused on unlocking Tobago's development potential. In your opinion, based on what the Chief Secretary presented yesterday, is it truly reflective of the theme that he had in mind?
Absolutely not. What we saw yesterday for us was almost a desperate type of budget. And when you begin your budget by talking about achievements that occurred over the last 2.5 years, when we budget every year, which means that you reported some of those last year, you're reporting again this year. And he proudly said, it's 2 years and 6 months we're reporting on. Then it means you're trying to hoodwink the public into believing that you're really making progress in your achievements. And for me, that was, a big thing that, you clearly cannot say this is what we have done, because not much has been achieved.
Are you saying
additionally,
that? Go ahead, continue.
Additionally, you call many things a success, but how do you know it's been a success? You continue to talk about the greatest little planet on the earth. What yardstick are you using to measure that, or does it sound like nice words? And at the end of the day, when you listen to the budget, it's like they just put a bunch of nice words together. And at the end of the day, it doesn't make sense, because where are your key performance indicators to tell us where we are going, or how we have done so far? Where are your growth targets to tell us what you intend to meet over the next year, to say that we have done better. We have continued to have a declining economy under this administration. People are out there feeling the pain. People are out there not even being able to put food on their tables consistently. Mothers go to bed hungry because they have to feed the children instead of themselves. So, what yardstick are you telling us that you are using to say next year you've come and this has improved? And we are not seeing that at all, any of that in the budget. It's a touchy-feely kind of thing.
Do you think that the 3.956 billion that he's argued for, however, I mean, you are disagreeing with what was presented yesterday, the actual figure that he has presented or was requesting from the Minister of Finance, which accounts for roughly 5.8% of our overall national budget. Do you think that is reasonable to actually address the needs of Tobago, all the needs of Tobago and Tobagonians?
Well, it's not enough to address the needs of Tobago, and that is another area that we are very concerned about, because for the last two budgets you requested 6.9%. We have had a major oil spill on the island where you have identified that the 50 million additional was clearly not enough. So how can you now come and say, okay, we are requesting 5.8%? It means that there's a lot of inconsistencies there. And again, what yardstick are you using to measure, to say this is what we need and this is not what we need? You additionally said, well, we're not going to be doing as many of the projects that we need. But if Tobago is to develop, you can't suppress, projects in terms of going forward. Who did you speak to know what projects should be suppressed and what not should be suppressed? Because this administration consistently refuses to talk to the people. There's no consultation being held for any of the budgeting that is being done, and that is not the hallmark of a modern democratic system.
No, I know.
We're
I know
still
that
in
you're
the
saying that.
top-down type of cake model that we saw from past administrations, and that is not good enough for the people of Tobago in 2024.
You're saying that the administration is not talking to the people. They consistently do not talk to the people. But the Chief Secretary used a large part of his time yesterday at the beginning of the presentation, as you mentioned, to speak about the achievements on the part of the THA. Don't you think that is reporting to the people?
No, I'm not talking about reporting to the people. I'm talking about discussing with the people. If we are talking participatory democracy and participatory budgeting that they bandy about, then it means that you have to go to the people, you have to go to the private sector, you have to go to the communities, okay, to hear from them and to discuss with them what do they expect to see in their communities, how do we go forward from here.
Now, unemployment is at 3%, according to the Chief Secretary. 60% of the island's population is employed by the Tobago House of Assembly, but the Chief Secretary is also asking for about $1 billion for development expenditure. Do you think, again, that development expenditure, without getting into too much details, because as you mentioned, he did not necessarily give away all the details yesterday in his presentation. We're not entirely sure as per everything. But how do we now shift away? How can the Chief Secretary work to shift away that reliance on the THA of 60% of the island actually working for the Tobago House of Assembly, 40% for the private sector? How does that now shift away?
And even though 60% works for the THA, many persons still are working and can't put food on the table. And this is where the administration has to think further than having the people just totally dependent on the administration. That is what they campaigned on to fix from the past, but they have continued in the same vein of having a dependency type of budgeting for the people to depend on the administration, when there are different things that they could do to ensure that people are more empowered and that they can, we raise the level of output of the GDP for the average person out there. Right now, Tobago is behind the national average of the GDP because per capita, because we are at about, I think, 76% less than Trinidad and 92% less than other countries out there. So it means that we have to start thinking innovatively about what do we do. And even the name of the budget, it doesn't give a sense that you really mean business and you understand the challenges that we have facing us. An idea budget would have called it reversing the economic decline through community empowerment. That would be clear what you're about to do and how you intend to do it. And therefore, that is what we would have renamed the budget to be, because you have to reverse that decline. And Tobago for too long has seen our development lagging behind Trinidad and other countries. And we have to start, like I said, having some innovative economics applied. And I want to bring forward the opportunity of Tobago to implement a model that has been shared recently in the public domain. I know Dr. Vanna shared that model, but it's a model of research that has been done for over 40 years and recently just coming to the fore in terms of the results of those research. And that has to do with what does it take to jumpstart the economy and also the development of the island in Tobago.
But what are your recommendations in that regard, though? In terms of development economics and what it takes to jumpstart the island of Tobago, I mean, what are your recommendations in respect to that? What are your thoughts on exactly what needs to be done or what needs to be implemented?
Well, I think we need to look at what are some of the things that scientifically has been put out there. Number one, we have to find ways of increasing the capital per worker. We have to increase the export per worker. How much we export. We have to increase the rate of savings of the in the economy and teaching people to do that, and increasing the output or the productivity of the worker in the domestic sector. And that model, the James Best and Lewis model, has suggested that we have to look at all areas at the same time in order to get it done. And in that model, there's no room for a top-down approach. You pretty much have to partner hand in hand with the business sector and the communities in participatory governance for this to work. You have to involve all stakeholders. So what you want to see is an increase in your manufacturing and your agriculture and your construction sector. Okay? The construction sector has been lagging, and therefore they have to pay attention to that. But in all of that, you don't know where you are going if you don't have your studies to show it. And therefore, having an independent institute like the Policy Research and Development and Monitoring Institute And I know that the PRDI that they had before, which was a sort of research area, they actually threw it out before. They said they will bring it back, but bring it back to do what? And you want this institute to provide the guidance and the monitoring that is necessary according to what we call your KPIs or your key performance indicators that you're going to lay out there so people can clearly see, okay, so this year I'm increasing by 5%, you know,
So
I'm
let me
increasing by
just
10%.
interject. I haven't even gotten into the actual allocations as such as yet. Before I do though, reflecting on what you were saying, about 2 weeks ago, the PRO of the IDA, Kate Trotman, actually stated that there is a need for, she's called on the Auditor General to actually have an immediate review of the THA's expenditure for fiscal 2023-2024 of the $2.585 billion that has been spent within the last fiscal year. That being said, we're not sure if that's ever going to happen. It's most likely, it's more than ever, it's not necessarily going to happen. However, the Chief Secretary, going back to his budget presentation yesterday, are you satisfied in any form or fashion that he has justified expenditure over the last year and therefore is justifying what it is he's going to do within the next fiscal year?
Absolutely not. And again, I go back to the fact that when you're reporting on 2.5 years of achievements, you didn't say you got $5 billion and this is what you did with it. You said in last year you got X amount of money, 2.585, and yet you're reporting on achievements that have been 2.5 years old. So we are not satisfied that he was able to justify. And yes, we called for an audit, the Auditor General to come in and really do an assessment of how the THA is spending those monies. But I'm saying that in going forward, that it's too late to call on the Auditor General when those monies have already been wasted in whatever they've been doing. And that is why we need to have some type of monitoring along the pathway such that we can guide that this is where they say they were going to develop and this is where the money should go. Right now, take for instance, crime is one of the #1 priorities in Tobago.
And the Chief Secretary, he did actually propose yesterday, he spoke about advocating for a THA police, but he's also spoken about implementing crime-fighting technologies that looks at smart city technologies.
Yes. So you're talking about bringing all of this into the space, but yet the budget does not reflect that this is what you want to do. Because if this has become an overwhelming situation, it is going to take a lot of money to take on that crime fighting arm from Tobago. And it is important that it is not just seen as something they do to squeeze themselves through the act. This really has to be taken on seriously. And I know that we called before for a seat on the National Security Council for Tobago to have a seat so that the security apparatus can naturally flow from that level into what we're doing in Tobago. But again, you know, we see a hodgepodge of, okay, we'll do this, we'll do this, we'll do this, but not enough of the legislative framework that allows you to pursue it and allows you to demand the level of budgeting that is required to set that up properly.
So if I was to look at the allocations now, education got the second highest. It was health that got the most, $879 million. As I mentioned, education $556 million, and infrastructure got $389 million. Focusing on health just for a moment, though, the Chief Secretary spoke actually to investments of $19.2 million for state-of-the-art medical equipment for Scarborough General and Roxborough hospitals, and also said $3 million would be spent to reduce waiting times for diagnostic services, because there is approximately 1,500 samples and images that has caused a backlog. Health getting the largest share of the budget in Tobago yesterday, based on what the Chief Secretary presented. Again, going back to development expenditure, it is needed. Medical equipment is needed all the time. We're hearing about the need to upgrade ambulances all the time. But again, has he focused on the right things, particularly in the health sector in Tobago?
Well, health got the largest amount last year too. What did they do with it? Again, if you don't have targets, money will be spent and you don't know where it has gone or how it has been spent, and there's been no improvement in the healthcare system, and they got the largest last year. So clearly it's not about the money issue. I mean, one of the things that, as basic as it is, we would like to see at this point is studies that show us where we're going. Take, for instance, there has been a rise of the number of special needs kids on the island. What type of preventative measures are they putting in place to reach these kids at an earlier age? We would like to see something, that a policy that is put out that says we're testing all children before they enter primary school for disabilities, and implementation of a support system for the children and parents. Right now, a lot of these children are languishing. The parents are becoming even more frustrated because their needs are not being met by the current education system and even the health sector in providing the services for these children to keep up pace with their counterparts. So we're not seeing it. Like I said, equipment does not make a successful healthcare center. Yes, it helps, but there's a lot more than equipment that we need to hear in terms of improving the services of the health sector.
Another key point yesterday, the Chief Secretary did not state a lot. He said negotiations with Caribbean Airlines are ongoing to restore domestic flight capacity to pre-COVID-19 levels. And he's also hinted at a new airline coming to Tobago in July of 2025. Again, he says negotiations are ongoing, but hasn't stated much further at this time. That leads to some promise for Tobago. Greater influx of tourists equals greater income.
Yes, and we would hope it's not another situation of we have moved from sand, sea, and leisure, which is something we used to compete with, but clearly other islands are doing way better than we are in that area, and yet we are here. We have to hear them. We are yet to hear them define what that new product should be. We thought that we would go into festival tourism, but they have consistently destroyed all the festivals. The jazz festival is gone. There's an attempt to put an October carnival, but the opportunities of still keeping a February carnival to appeal to maybe tourist ships that would come that just want a day of experience, they have destroyed that. They have destroyed, well, decimated our Heritage Festival, because if you look at the calendar, there are many spaces that are left open. At least 9 communities have been taken out, and classic communities that would normally participate in the heritage were taken out this year. We have the the opportunity of diaspora tourism, where persons abroad would come home, would bring their children to experience the heritage so that they know what traditions we had in the past and how, how it was actually played out in terms of performances. But those classics are no longer there. And so again, everything seems to be hodgepodge without a clear plan, without clear, indicators as to how we are achieving what they want to call greatest little island on the world, in the world or in the planet or whatever it is. We're still not sure what that is and how you're going to achieve it.
Now, moving forward, because we are running out of time, your thoughts, though, on the Chief Secretary saying that there will be no support for the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority on the part of the THA, nor will there be any support for property tax. He says that he has some concerns surrounding it, especially as it relates to the fight for the autonomy of Tobago's autonomy. He says he wants to meet with the Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, urgently to discuss such concerns, even accusing the government of being against Tobago's development. But again, to the point of him rejecting the Revenue Authority and property tax, what are your thoughts and opinions? Do you support his rejection of such?
Again, you have to, there's some things that are, there in law. And, this chief secretary, this was the chief secretary who called war on Trinidad from very early. So you can't call war on Trinidad, you create bad blood, and then you expect to just pick up the phone and people will come to you. But at the same time, I'm saying that the Prime Minister needs to hold himself to higher ground. He is the Prime Minister. And therefore, if these are pressing issues, the Tobago House of Assembly Act says that they shall meet regularly to discuss the issues of Tobago. So they have to find a way of putting aside their differences and meet each other on behalf of Tobago. Because at the end of the day, you cannot say that you're not doing the property tax or the revenue, whatever, because those are people who, it's not you who are paying it. It's the average person out there, and therefore the government just has to go after the persons who are not compliant with the laws at the end of the day. So I don't know that that is the way to go about it. Yes, he talks big, but can he carry it out? I doubt that he can. And again, have you had full consultations with the people to truly understand the issues that you can champion for them?
Do you think that the Chief Secretary and by extension the entire THA has received the necessary support from central government?
No, there has been the tugging and pulling of the central government, and this is not from now. This has been years in coming, and that is why the IDA is advocating for a new design of the government that does not, we're not just talking about Tobago autonomy, we're talking about full constitutional reform that treats with the design of the new government in Trinidad and in Tobago, such that no community could be left behind, no Tobago will be left behind, that there will be equity in terms of how it is done, and it will not be left to any incoming government to decide this is how we want to treat with Tobago, or this is not how we want to treat with Tobago, or even for the incoming government in the THA to decide this is how we want to treat with a community and not treat with other communities. Because we see in the budget where a lot has been done in the East in terms of, I think it's lighting, street lighting, and I'm asking, what about the rest of the island? Are we going to get better street lights? Are the roads going to be fixed? I mean, I can't tell you how many how many tires I have changed since this administration has come into being with the number of potholes that we have across the island. So there's a lot of work to be done, and yes, the relationship with central government has always been a challenge, and it is time that we find a new way forward in terms of dealing with our relationship between Trinidad and Tobago to be able to walk side by side as it is expected to be. We are half the country. Regardless of size, we are half the country. If Tobago does well, Trinidad and Tobago does well. And until we start seeing it in that way, we are not going to be going anywhere anytime soon.
Dr. Digicel Angus, thank you very much for joining us on the program this morning and sharing your thoughts and opinions with us. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
All the very best. Political leader of the Innovative Democratic Alliance, the IDA, Dr. Digicel Angus, joining us on the program this morning, just reflecting on what happened yesterday by the THA. $3.956 billion, roughly 5.8% of the TT, $65 billion that the Minister of Finance allocated last year. He has argued that this budget is for unlocking Tobago's development potential. Whether or not that happens within the next fiscal year or the foundations for such are implemented within the next fiscal year, we'll see. So, ladies and gentlemen, we take a break here on the program. We will return shortly.
This is Face of Sports, WESN Content Capital. How you felt about the kiss on the lip?
That's the business. I'm nothing to do with that.
I find that was distasteful.
The national senior team, whether you like it or not, that is the model for all other teams to follow.
I'm assuming that the regional requirement may be a much stricter requirement.
This is not about Pro League and Super League. This is a league run by the Normalization Committee that I'm responsible for.
Nobody expected FIFA to fund this arrangement.
If we don't get a professional attitude towards this, we are doomed for failure.
You break the balance, trip the leg, control the body.
They ain't gonna stand put forever.
Why you want the Chiefs to lose so? Why you want the Chiefs to lose so?
They already have two. Lamar don't
Why?
have.
You're jealous because you know the Chiefs getting closer to the Patriots. Let's go to the last part.
No,
of the
not no.
Let's go to the last part.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. as we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation. Contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
Welcome back to AM Prime. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for staying with us this morning. We continue the conversation focusing on politics, and hopefully this proves to be a bit more of a constructive conversation as compared to our previous. And that being said, there's a lot happening globally in the world of politics. For example, in the United Kingdom, a snap election was called. That's due to be held next week, Thursday. There's hints at shifting tides within the UK. It's a similar situation in France as well. Also, snap elections are taking place. Again, a lot to be said there. So we can't get into the story of every single country, but what is happening globally in the political landscape? How can that be reflected here in TNT, more particularly with the young people? I'm joined by an individual who has not said much on politics, but does have an opinion on this particular topic. I'm joined by columnist Dr. Gerald Matis. He's with us in studio. Good morning. Welcome to the program.
Good morning, Kizan, and good morning to everyone.
Well, thanks for joining us once more on the program. As I mentioned, you don't often speak about the world of politics. What engaged you to do such?
Yeah. So I listened to your previous, got part of your previous guest on, and I'm not a political analyst. I've never done professional training in youth development, but I can observe things happening around the world. And there's something happening particularly throughout Europe. Also in the US to a lesser extent. And it got my attention because a trend I see is developing. And it's been brewing for some time. And that trend has to do with a gradual shift more towards the far right. So we think about politics on a scale. We have the left, the center, and the right. The right, typically nationalist, conservative. The left, more liberal, more about internationalism, etc. And in the center, as you can guess, pretty much occupying that middle ground. But then we have the far right, which is a sort of ultra-nationalist sentiment and ideology. And what we're seeing in Europe, particularly in France and Germany, let's say, with their European Parliament elections, young people were found to have been moving more far right, which is something unusual because young people tend to be concerned with questions of rights and freedom.
Of course.
Ideologies that are synonymous with the left. So it's a really interesting kind of trend that we're seeing, and it's definitely something to keep track of because France called a snap election in light of their recent loss of ground in their EU election. And snap elections are sort of hit and miss because it sort of signifies instability. And President Emmanuel Macron, he called the snap election with the hope that it could solidify his base. We'll see how it goes.
But it is interesting. You've just named two European Union giants. The country that just exited the European Union, the United Kingdom. That election sees the left actually gaining grounds. In fact, it's predicted that Labour will have a landslide victory. So, do you think that this ultra-nationalist movement is focusing more so on the independence, the autonomy of these nations? That is why there is a focus from young voters.
Yeah, I think so. But it must be said that the Labour Party, they're not quite left, they're also more center-left. So they're also occupying that middle ground in the hope that it doesn't estrange those would-be young voters who would otherwise have voted for the left, because we're seeing that certain values like rights and freedoms, and by rights and freedoms I mean things like LGBTQ rights, for example, like climate change. Those values are occupying less priority. And we're seeing issues of jobs, for example, job creation, affordable housing for young people, opportunities for young people. These are the things that they care about. And actually, one of the polls from the German EU election, they were found that climate change was just rank just lower than more pressing issues such as inflation. So young people are really worried about the economy, and I think we can draw a similar situation in Trinidad.
But the thing is, if we are reflecting on what's happening globally, because we've used the European Union as an example, globally, however, this trend seems to be taking place. How is that actually reflective of what's taking place locally with our politics?
So I think they're similar in terms of the ideology. So thankfully we don't have a far-right party to tout issues of, say, anti-immigration, or at least on a large scale, or anti-internationalism. But issues such as the economy still occupy a very important role. I refer to Shakira Burton, who won the Poetry Grand Slam, NGC Bogus Lit Fest. Her piece was about young people and getting jobs, and there was a frustration there brewing. And I like to think, with my literature background, poetry is the voice of the people, and Burton's piece captured that. There's a real anxiety among young people, I think. I don't claim to be a spokesperson for young people. I'm nearing the end point of my category as youth, technically. Cutoff year is 35. But I still feel that I can relate to young people. I don't know what TikTok is, actually. But I still feel like I understand some of that, right? So while the ideologies might be different, I feel like the sentiment is still the same. At the core, I think, for young people, some issues remain the same, and that really has to do with what is being done for opportunities.
You've claimed not to be a political analyst, but everyone has an opinion, and I'm curious to know, based off of your research and even what you would have heard, your opinion, do you think that that lack of political ideology, we don't have that in TNT as such, unless you get really into what politicians say when they are campaigning or when they get into office, we don't have clearly defined political ideologies. Our ideologies are PNM, UNC, red, yellow, that's really what it is. Do you think that is actually a core part of our problem, especially in 2024, 2025, we're heading into a general election?
Yeah, absolutely. What do we believe in? Like, who do we look to? How do we identify, these kind of ideologies? So that dearth of ideologies that you're referencing there, I think that's a real problem, because you look around at our leaders and you see infighting. We saw the internal elections. We see cross-fighting, which continues. There was a recent sports rally by the PNM, and they use it as a political platform. So it's not necessarily about the ideology, because you're right, I think there's a lack of one. But there is what I would say, a politics of revenge, a politics of blame. And if that is our ideology, I think that is what further estranges young people, because we're tired of it.
But you're saying that we're tired of it, but do you think young people in TNT in particular are willing to participate first by subscribing to a new style of politics? Yeah. Do you think that level of participation exists?
No, I don't. I think the youth arms of the various political parties, I think they're more focused on creating a pipeline of voters to solidify their base. And I don't think the focus should be on developing their critical thinking and allowing them to be leaders in their own right. So the participation thing, when it does occur, it's more about let's sturdy up our base for the next generation of voters for these two political parties.
But then, Gerald, we find ourselves in a situation. Why does the youth vote matter then? If that level of young people may be frustrated, but that frustration is not necessarily equal to participation. So therefore, we find ourselves in a problem. Whilst you're suggesting, watch out for the youth vote, is there even a youth vote to speak about?
Yeah. So yes, we're sort of blinded by the fact that we have a poor culture of data keeping. So we can't even identify what is the pool of eligible young voters. So that's a problem. The census was supposed to be done in 2022. We're still using the pandemic as an excuse for why the census hasn't been completed. Censuses tend to be expensive. Okay, we get that. But it's been 2 years now, and we need a census to let us know how many eligible young voters there are. So that's a problem. But the vote, there is a youth vote. I think it's, like I said, I think it's being channeled into just party politics. So I think that's where it's going, and we're kind of skewed. So we need data collection, and we need youth arms to like be a bit better in what they're doing. But there is a youth vote because the fact is those young people are not turning up as much as they should. And I think there's a lack of motivation, a lack of encouragement, a lack of inspiration. And that sort of is being masked and sort of...
Well, clearly you're not going to get that inspiration or that motivation from what is currently being offered.
Yeah.
In fact, what is currently being offered is quite possibly why there is a lack of youth participation.
Yeah.
That being said, it's going to take some sort of self-motivation on the part of young people to actually open their eyes and probably realize, hold up, I think I need to do a bit more than I'm currently doing.
Yes.
The problem is, do we have enough young leaders in TNT that are actually willing to take that stand? And I say that we have youth councils.
Yeah.
We whether it be the Trinidad Youth Council, the Tobago Youth Council, we have youth arms of political parties, but they do not seem to be beyond just the organization.
Yeah.
It just seems to be focused on the organization and the objectives of the organization, not necessarily exporting that beyond the organization and truly reflective of a leader beyond their tenure and such.
Yeah.
So then there is a lack of, would you say there is a lack of young leadership?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And even those who are, let's for example say in the opposition, they're more focused on blame and holding on to power. So there are young politicians, young parliamentarians. They're just not serving young people, which is unfortunate because we always say, well, young people don't get a chance, we don't get a voice. But when we do get the voice, those aren't doing the job and serving young people.
Do you think that you as a young voter can be persuaded?
I think I can, because I'm done with the two-party system, so I can absolutely be persuaded. It will come down though to not just the leader of a particular party, but also the people around them. I understand why people would, even young people, might gravitate towards the two major political parties. They've been in power for the longest time. They've shared power. They have sort of competent people, we would hope.
I like that, sort of competent.
But no, I can't be persuaded. But it would take a lot. It would take a lot to actually show that young people actually matter and issues are being spotlighted, the issues that we care about.
Okay, a fair point in that regard. But are you of the opinion that, again, I think he gave away his age a bit this morning, in so many years, you know, of your studies, your observations, you're a columnist. I mean, you've produced many columns. We'll get into that actually at the latter half of the program. But, you know, do you think that that is going to come from the already established entities?
The persuasion, yeah, well...
Let's put it this way, you haven't been persuaded now as such.
Yeah.
There is a lack of confidence. That has led to great frustration. As you mentioned, I as a young person too, I hope so, I still feel kind of young in some ways. But, you know, at the same time, I share in that frustration.
Yeah.
The thing is that what we have seen is an oversubscription to this sort of, whatever the political ideology is in TNT, this two-party system.
Yeah.
And regardless of new entities that may arise, they don't necessarily get that level of support. So is there too much of a reliance for this change to come from what is currently what currently exists?
Yeah. No, I don't think there's too much of reliance. I think that what the stereotypes around young people is that we're headstrong, we're impatient, but we're also in the best position to take risks. And I think young people being in that position, I think that's a real strength because we're not burdened by, you know, our parents, perhaps, we don't have that sort of sensibility, and we care about what is currently happening. We're seeing, let's show, for example, the pro-Palestine movement. It's young people at my university, they were driving that, and young people much significantly younger than I was. So I think it's about risk-taking, and if we make a mistake, like, we accept that and we move on. But I think right now, given that we have the general election coming up next year, I think now is the time to mobilize and organize ourselves. And first of all, be inspired, wake up early, go to the polling stations. EBC, let's be honest, they have gotten better. It took me like a couple minutes to vote last election.
Same thing with me.
Yeah, so they have gotten better. It's just about waking up early again, maybe a stereotype not associated with young people. But the first thing, we need to be inspired enough to show up. And I don't think right now it's all about, well, the old people not giving us a chance. But the thing is, we need to take our chance, and if possible, we need to take that risk as well.
I very much like the line that you said that we, as young people, are in the best position to take risk. I very much appreciate that, and we will get further analysis, and we will continue the conversations in a bit, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to take a break here on the program, but when we return, there's a question that Gerald had asked. I'm wondering if he's, since authoring this particular piece, he's gotten an answer. But there's also a lot more that Gerald is offering to the nation, and by extension, the wider world. We'll get into that after this.
Seven is out, all day is in. WESN News on the hour.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
This is 10 Questions. I'm Andy Johnson. The distance from where we should be in the world in going forward on our commitments with climate change.
The effects of climate change that cannot be accounted for. It's called loss and damage, and we're seeing loss and damage happening so much more in this decade the previous decade.
The principal term there was this question of the correspondent banking issues.
That is why we're trying to build capacity with this country here, Trinidad and Tobago, and other countries in the region.
Man is not showing any signs of stopping or even slowing down. More than half of the forest in Trinidad is already gone.
All the plants and all the animals and all of the nice clean water and fresh air and everything had to be on this planet for humanity to have a chance.
We have small change when it comes to countries that can take decisions, and when they speak, the world listens.
The General Assembly is a very democratic forum. And Trinidad and Tobago has the same vote as Canada, in spite of the obvious difference in size.
Young at heart, purpose-driven, patriot even. When you like to party, but are still passionate about discussing important issues, the only place where your needs will be met is WESN Content Capital.
Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Continuing the conversation this morning, and it really focuses on the youth voice here in TNT. We've had conversations focusing on such over the last few months on this platform, and it is going to continue. 2025 is a crucial year for TNT, but I say so in the aspect that not because it's a general election, but because youth participation can decide our fate. That being said, I'm joined by Dr. Gerald DeMattis. He's with us in studio. Thank you for being with us once more, Dr. DeMattis. Continuing the conversation where we left off, you asked a question, when will we ever see a prime ministerial debate in TNT? And I will ask you a question. You have indicated that the Debates Commission, the TNT Debates Commission, exists. That's fair enough. Now, apparently there are lots of organizations that exist but are non-functional. However, do you think that with this organization existing, that we will see a prime ministerial debate, that there will be a level of participation? We know that there should be, but do you think it is possible? Given trends,
You're backing me into a corner here. At my most optimistic, I can't see it happening. I can't see a debate happening. That would be great to see one. And the commission has tried. The last time they tried, we understand, that was peak pandemic, 2019 into 2020. So fair enough. We'll see again. I'm sure they have engaged the political leaders. I'm confident of that. But I still don't think it'll be enough, because I don't think we're there yet ideologically, where we're ready to have like an actual conversation in a civilized way about the issues that matter, and are ready to actually field questions from the public. Because I think right now we're good at shouting at each other, and the political leaders sort of encapsulate that. We're good at taking jabs at each other in Parliament, but when it comes down to actually being pressed on issues that they want to implement, I don't think, one, there's a problem of articulation. So how do you make that intelligible to the public? And two, how do you accept that you might be wrong? And I think those are two important things during a debate. You must be able to conduct yourself in a professional way, but also accept that at some points you might get it wrong.
most impressed, because that's not only something for debate, that's a life lesson on a whole, accepting when you could be wrong. The other determining factor, as you mentioned, is the politicians themselves. The thing is that, again, there has been a lack of a concrete plan because of a lack of ideology.
Yeah.
There's no concrete plan as such. That has hindered the potential for debate. Do you think that that is something young people need to demand?
Yeah.
That we want to see you all on a platform, all of you all, whoever that may be, laying out your concrete plans and debating one another. Is that something that needs to be demanded?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And we need to expect more beyond that, right? We need to expect more from our leaders. How that process happens, how that demand happens, I don't know. The Prime Minister, the opposition leader can freely decline, and there's nothing we can really do about it. What we can do is vote. We can't say this is unacceptable. We need mature leaders. We need leaders who can face off against each other in a productive way. And if those leaders can't do that, then we'll vote you out.
Our expectations for them are high. Our expectations for ourselves also at that same level.
Yeah, that's a good point. We do seem to have high expectations for them, and maybe we do need to lower it considerably, given where we're at and where we have been for quite some times. But I think we should maintain our expectations. Those shouldn't drop, because we need to hold people accountable. And I think for young people in particular, because these issues are only going to intensify. I mean, yes, we can talk about climate change. You had a guest previously talking about Tobago. We need, those issues are going to intensify for young people in the next year, within the next 5 years. So it's time that we make that decision now. First, being inspired to vote and then showing up to the polls.
It's an interview, by the way, that I was not too pleased with myself, if I may say so. But I think I made that clear previously. But anyway, Gerald, there's something a bit more personal that I'm curious to know. Again, you don't often comment on the political landscape. So I was most surprised but pleased. Given what you said this morning, though, one of the key points is that you've studied abroad. Absolutely fantastic what you've achieved, and if I'm not mistaken, you are back and forth because you also work abroad, you know. But the thing is, I don't doubt that TNT is home and it will always be home. But do you think that you're going to continue to make it your home for the rest of your life?
Yeah, absolutely. And my columns are one way to do that. It keeps me in touch with the country and what's happening. Also, I still, as much as I am quite cynical and critical in my columns, it actually comes from a place of love, a deep, deep and profound love for this country, this complicated country. So I definitely will continue to remain connected, regardless of how much I go back and forth, because I realize too, studying abroad, it has opened my eyes to, you know, how things are done differently, and how much better things could be here. So through my columns, that's one way for me to keep thinking about those issues and how we can become better.
Well, I actually think it's a perfect way to shift the conversation now away from that one particular column and try in the very best sense as possible, reflect on your columns that you've presented weekly over the last year at least, because you, in 1 week's time, will actually be launching your first publication, first published book, Opinions in Review 2023. First of all, congratulations. This is rather exciting, but tell us more about the book itself and what the book actually, it gives away a hint, Opinions in Review, but what does the book itself actually present to the public?
Yeah, first of all, I want to talk about what the book, as in its entirety, what it represents. It represents production. And I want that book, everything that book encapsulates, the very book, very item, I want that to be an inspiration for young people. So you can create something, you don't have to wait around. It was a self-published book. I designed it myself, and I compiled it myself. So you don't have to wait around for anyone to do anything, okay, specifically within the context of young people. Now, in terms of what the book captures, it is meant to be a year in review reflection through the eyes of one person, that one person being me. All of the columns I've written last year sort of compiled and in the order that it was published. So what I also hope that readers get out of it is how things can be changed. And perhaps someone reading 10 years from now might say, oh, wow, we've made so much progress, hopefully. That is what they say. They don't say, well, things haven't really changed at all.
But as I said, you write a column weekly. Yeah. Over this particular period of time that you're focusing on, 2023 to 2024, what are some of the developments or declines that you have seen or experienced?
The developments. Yeah.
Developments, declines. I mean, again, given your work and what you focused on, you tend to focus on a lot of societal issues, a lot of social issues, and not often political issues, but you are very much reflective of Trinidad and Tobago society and what we're seeing happening globally. And I'm curious to know, in your opinion, what are some of the wins or some of the losses that you would have seen within the last year?
Yeah, unfortunately, I would have to say there have been more losses, more declines. Connected to questions of society and culture, I've focused a lot on cyberbullying, for example, which I feel is only going to intensify, not just in Trinidad. Youth mental health, these are the things that I feel would matter to young people, of course, growing up with all these distractions around them, around us. I also think that pushing for more equality, more LGBTQ rights, those should matter, given the climate that we're in right now. I think young people are finding themselves more with access to international media. They're realizing, well, I'm not actually that different after all, and I shouldn't be persecuted for that. So those also form a major part of my writing, and I would hope that with every... I'm grateful for an editor that is allowing those articles to be published, because that shows in itself some sort of progress. It's now a matter of who's reading it. I don't take for granted that maybe not many people read my columns, but I'm hoping that if there's one person, one parliamentarian who reads it and is reminded of something, one independent senator, for example, who can actually bring those issues to government. Also things like policy, climate change policy. We saw recently another oil spill off Tobago. That has been something, last time I was here, we spoke about that in the context of COP28. So those are I'd like to think that the wins for my columns have to do with continuous dialogue, because that's where I think change has to begin. It has to begin with, as prosaic as this may sound, it has to begin with the conversation. And if people aren't talking about it, we won't really understand, and it's very much in the spotlight.
You like a challenge, don't you? I mean, apart from focusing on all of that, you've mentioned that this is self-published and self-designed. You really like a challenge, don't you?
I'm nothing if not ambitious.
That is quite a remarkable thing. But in putting this book together, did you find any difficulties in really putting the essence of Dr. Jarrell DeMatteis in it? Or is it something that came naturally to you?
Oh, what is my essence? I'm continuously trying to figure that out. It was not difficult for me, the writing, because I had done, thankfully, I sort of cheated. I did most of the writing the year before.
His first lesson was, be ambitious. These are things that you can do. The second lesson was, I cheated a little.
Listen, sometimes you need to know to work hard. Work smart,
work
not
smart.
hard, right? But I did include some, a preface in the book, which was possibly the hardest thing I had to write, even though I write weekly columns. It was the hardest thing because I actually wanted to give readers an insight into my journey as a writer. So that was probably the hardest part, because in addition to not writing about politics much, you might also note that I don't write about myself and my identity much. And that's because...
That's the mystery.
Right, so...
I don't even know if his real name is Gerald.
I am a doctor, though.
Yes, it's
so the actual design of the book was also It also took some time because I'm not necessarily like this creative person in terms of visuals. So that was a learning curve for me. But again, if we're just tying things back to what we've talked about, it's all about embracing those challenges as young people and being brave, but also being patient with ourselves, because we will learn and things will happen. But if we don't find that they're happening soon enough, we have to be able to grab it.
What role do you think you have to play in respect to TNT's future? What role are you willing and wanting to play?
These are difficult questions.
I know, right? They just come to me.
Paige, you didn't prepare me for this one. I like this role that I'm in right now. I like that I'm able to write, and this is my strength. But I also I want my role to be helping people to think, writing about things that people aren't quite aware of, and showing people that things are happening around us, and we should use that as inspiration to create change. And for young people in particular, I hope that they read this and they be inspired to create something of their own, but also read it and be inspired to mobilize and seek out change wherever it may be for them, if it's in politics or not.
Do you think that you are making an impact? Do you think that you are leading in some way or the other a revolution? If you said that you're opening up people's minds, that's a paradigm shift in itself.
Yeah. I'm not sure if, I mean, some people read my columns and they say, these are really good columns. I really enjoy columns. I've heard people say they're the only one my column is the only one that they read. So I'm really inspired by that. I'm grateful for that. But in terms of how I view my impact, I'm not sure yet. I'm still learning the things that I don't know, right? So I'm still learning.
I don't think you'll ever stop.
Right? So as much as, yes, I would like to think that I'm showing people a different path, and we're talking about difficult issues that 40 years ago we wouldn't be thinking about. I would love to think that I'm doing something new here. But more importantly, I want to inspire people to do the same, because I'm sure they're much better people, much more capable than I am to do that.
Well, the book Opinions in Review, and, you know, when you take a look back, have you ever been challenged by yourself, not by society, there will always be challenges, but by yourself to express your true opinions and thoughts and put it out there?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But it's part of my journey and my progress as a writer, because when I started out, the way I was writing was very harsh, and I realized that I couldn't win any readers over because it was almost polemic in that way. I was picking fights, but now I've learned to temper my argument, and in terms of my true opinion, they are still my true opinions. I do believe that if young people can show up to the polls, I think we can be major disruptors. We may not vote the person that we want to be in Parliament, but we can shake up a system. I truly believe that. And I do believe all of the things I write. It's just a matter of how I'm framing the opinion. And in particular, this most recent column, what I've done is I've shown how young people are showing up and how they're being pulled to the far right in a way that could be dangerous for Europe. But if we use it productively here, we can actually make it useful for us.
Do you plan on continuing authoring columns for time to come?
I do plan on doing. I'm not sure when I will stop. Sometimes I do feel like it's a lot, you know, it's a lot to come up with ideas, and sometimes I'm just not feeling to write. But I do want to continue. I want to continue publishing opinions and reviews in, 2024, 2025. And when I stop, I'll stop. But right now, I don't see myself stopping.
Now, Gerald, where can people actually get a copy of this book? I know the book launch is next week.
Yes.
but any information on this point that you can share with them in actually getting a copy of this book?
Yes, so it is on Amazon. And for those who will attend the launch, I do plan to have a little discount, a small discount, so you can have a special launch price. In terms of getting it into local bookstores, that is in progress, so that will happen eventually, I hope. But certainly on Amazon, on Barnes & Noble as well. And if you reach out to me, I'm sure we can organize a delivery.
Oh, excellent, wonderful. Now, in closing, and again, thank you very much for your time this morning. We actually were able to get through a lot, and I'm very pleased and satisfied. You said quite a number of things that even has me on the spot. You know, we're saying that we as young people, we're in the best position to take risk. You know, even politically, as you were speaking about, and socially. But what do you want your message overall from this morning's discussions to young people? I think, how would you conclude that, given all that has been said?
Yeah, I think we need to, as young people, we need to be aware of what is going on in the world. I know it's a lot to take in, and there are multiple conflicts happening right now. There's still a war in Ukraine. There's still invasion of Palestine. So there's a lot of negative things and a lot of turn-offs that would make us not want to watch the news. But we need to be aware of what is going on as young people, because we're in the best position to be most affected by these consequences. Yes, we can talk about climate change, but also questions of inflation. So I think as young people, we need to be aware. We can't be like, I always give the analogy, we can't be like SpongeBob in a pineapple under the sea. So I think we need to read more. I think we also really should draw inspiration. And if we're not getting inspiration from people around us, we should be inspired by ourselves, by the fact that we're willing to create a change. And we need to be proactive in that. I also think that now would be the time to, like I said, mobilize in communities, organize ourselves, and be inspired enough for when the general election does come around, that we're in the best position to vote, we're well informed, and we can make a decision, whatever that decision will be.
Dr. DeMatteis is leading a paradigm revolution there with his words. Dr. Jarrell DeMatteis, congratulations once more. I think it's excellent, your messaging this morning, but even the work that you've done with your columns and the publication of this work, self-publication, if I can stress on that. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And thank you very much for being here this morning and for taking the time to join us on the program.
Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, that is where we conclude AM Prime for this morning. Thank you very much to my guests for joining me on the program. I'm glad that we were able to have some constructive conversation this morning, indeed. And hopefully it has opened up your mind and really opened up your eyes to a lot more that is prevalent in our society. We probably tend to turn our backs to it because we're so frustrated and stressed out by so many things. It's difficult to keep up at times. But the message from Dr. DeMatteis is that really it's time for us to inspire ourselves, and it's really time for us to be motivated by our frustrations. Use it constructively, and I fully agree with that message. And that's it. I want to thank also my team behind the doors who always make AM Prime happen in Ryan Gomez-Burke and Mal Wood. We thank them very much for their hard work and efforts. And of course, to you, the viewer, have a good day ahead, a safe one, a productive one. And I'm Keaton Shaw saying, I'll see you again very soon. Hopefully, fingers crossed. Bye-bye.
WESN.
The home of Caribbean content is growing, and we welcome you to be a part of the #1 platform for young personalities who are driven to make a positive impact in society. As we continue to reach every corner of Trinidad and Tobago through our daily broadcasts, our social media pages, or through our 75+ digital billboards across the nation, contact us to learn about our competitive rates via marketing at wesncc.com or call us at 628-5835. WESN Content Capital, television with a difference.
Coming soon to WESN.
Pastor J, I want to get a tattoo.
You really
respond to me. Respond to me how you would respond to me.
The first question I'll ask is why?
Controversial taboo topics.
We get so consumed by church, we forget that we have to live the life of being a Christian outside of the Sunday.
Like you say,
services.
we think going to a service makes us a Christian.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right. So we are about to hear the second time Pastor J wanted to take a tattoo.
Would have been late last year and early this year.
Oh gosh.
Hope Unfiltered podcast with Pastor J and Ren. Coming soon to WESN.
Take some time for yourself or spend some time with the family at Sandy Point Village Hotel. Enjoy our various studio and suite apartments, self-contained with their own kitchenettes and Wi-Fi. We also have our famous 100-foot swimming pool and our beachfront restaurant, the Steak and Lobster Grill. And our location in Crown Point puts us near the center of activity from the nylon pool to the local nightlife. Call us and make your reservations at 639-8533, 389-2378 or email us at sandypointvillagehotel@gmail.com.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website fanzonett.com to make your purchase today. The newest book is here, Closer to the Church, the debut novel by author and former mayor Louis Lee Singh. Available at all the Home Store branches, Barataria, West Mall, Shogunas and C3 San Fernando. Paper-based bookshop 10 Nook Avenue, St. Anne's. WESN 30A Gattaca Street, Woodbrook. Metropolitan Bookshop, Ariapita Avenue, Woodbrook, and all RIK bookstores nationwide. Available online as paperback on Amazon.com and Kindle for e-readers. For more info, call 628-5835 or 389-6504. Also available from author Louis Lee Singh, I Used to Live in Heaven, Letters to My Granddaughters, and Local Government in Trinidad, Conspiracy Against the People.
military positions in northern Israel. So this is just a retaliation on that assassination. And if we follow the trends of the past few weeks, we will probably see a de-escalation shortly afterwards.
We've got the latest for you now on the war in Ukraine. And Kyiv says its forces have withdrawn from a district in the key eastern town of Chasiv Yar. Russian forces have recently claimed several advances there. The fall of the small hilltop town is a worry for Ukraine because it would likely accelerate Russian advances toward bigger civilian hubs in the wider eastern Donetsk region. Hurricane Beryl is now roaring toward Mexico after the powerful storm ripped off roofs in Jamaica and the eastern Caribbean. 95% of all homes were destroyed on a pair of islands in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. At least 10 people have been killed from the hurricane so far, but the number does look set to rise. Liza Kamanoff has more.
torrential rain and wind gusts of over 200 kilometers per hour, Hurricane Beryl hammered Jamaica on Wednesday. The storm, which has claimed several lives across the Caribbean, has left roofs ripped off, roadways blocked by fallen trees, and communities in northern Jamaica without any electricity. In a video posted on social media, Jamaica's Prime Minister assured residents that authorities would seek to restore affected areas quickly.
The emergency services will seek to restore power and water as quickly as possible. However, citizens should not seek to remove down poles or power lines or disturb water mains. Please use the emergency numbers given to report damage to public utilities and do not take unnecessary risks.
Neighbouring St. Vincent and the Grenadines felt the brunt of the storm earlier this week. 95% of homes were destroyed and there is no more electricity nor usable roads. The island of Barbados has also been affected. In the capital of Bridgetown, fishermen at the harbour removed sunken fragments of their boats smashed to pieces by big waves overnight.
I never really experienced a system like this yet, at this magnitude, but yeah, I don't think that nobody wants to go through this yet.
Hurricane Beryl is the first Category 5 Atlantic storm of the season. It is expected to pass by the Cayman Islands on Thursday before heading for Mexico's Yucatan Peninsula. Authorities there are already making preparations. Schools have been suspended in some states, shelters set up and military personnel deployed.
In the United States, Joe Biden is vowing to stay in the race despite a disastrous debate performance and continuing to slip in the polls. During a televised match with Donald Trump last week, Biden appeared flustered and fatigued, frequently mixing up his words and losing his train of thought. The White House now in crisis mode as it struggles to manage growing worries over the 81-year-old's physical and mental fitness for the job. But a group of Democratic governors who met with Biden on Wednesday say they still stand behind the president as their nominee. The White House press secretary, Karine Jean-Pierre, was equally categorical.
Look, I cannot lay out something that would change the president's mind. He has been very clear, and he's going to continue to build on the unprecedented record that he's been able to lay out for the American people. That's his focus right now.
Well, today is July 4th, and in the United States, Americans are celebrating Independence Day. And then next Sunday, the French will also celebrate their National Day. Solange Mougin is in the studio with us to break down some of the traditions on both sides of the Atlantic. Well placed to talk about this, Solange. Let's start with the U.S. So you know and I know, but let's tell everyone else, what do Americans traditionally do on the 4th of July?
As you said, as we both know, in all seriousness, they eat. It's for decades and centuries, actually. It's all been about hot dogs and hamburgers and potato salad, coleslaw, apple pie, and watermelon as well. Families generally gather to have a barbecue and a picnic, and you see this love of food even in some of the niche traditions that happen today. In New York City, for example, there's an annual hot dog eating contest on the 4th of July. It is now in its 108th tradition. It's been making headlines this year in particular because its star, who won 16 times previously and also broke the world record of eating 76 hot dogs in 10 minutes, just incredible, won't be participating this year because he has signed an endorsement deal with a plant-based or non-meat meat company. Now, over the dispute, New York City's mayor, he called all parties to stop being weenies, which is an amazing pun. But this controversy aside, nationwide, there will be over 150 million hot dogs consumed today alone. Now, for many Americans, as this expat tells us in France, he explained that it is a day to be with family.
It's a national holiday, and we don't have a lot of them in the U.S., so it's a good thing. Otherwise, it's a day to go out with your family, have a picnic like this one. We also play softball.
Now, the 4th is also embodied by pyrotechnics. For fireworks are actually largely legal in nearly all of the U.S. states. There are lavish displays, of course, in most of the major cities, but many families also fire them off themselves at home. It is a rapidly growing industry, $2 billion industry, but the 4th being a day for fireworks, it is also quite dangerous. In 2022, for example, there were over 10,000 trips to the ER during the holiday, and 3/4 of those visits were because of fireworks, especially a number of kids, a third of kids. So outdoor meals, yes, but with the explosives, better to
be careful.
Yes, exactly, and be careful.
All right, there's another tradition that really embodies Independence Day in the U.S., and that's, of course, parades and military parades.
Yeah, like in many countries, military parades are a standard on national holidays. They're a standard in Rwanda today, as well as it's their Liberation Day. But back to the U.S. In Washington, D.C., there is an annual national parade, but for decades in small towns and bigger ones as well, local officials, community leaders, first responders, they parade through Main Street with locals waving flags. Sometimes their founding father, people dressed up as founding fathers, Native Americans, revolutionary costumes, and the like. And this has everything to do with, of course, the origin of Independence Day. For it commemorates the day, the 4th of July, 1776, that the Second Continental Congress officially adopted the Declaration of Independence, or the secession from Britain. It was actually signed 2 days earlier on July 2nd. And for the history trivia out there, the one and only president that refused to celebrate it on the 4th of July was founding father John Adams. He's the U.S.